There are a lot of advantages to joining a practice, I think, when you're just coming out, and that felt more right for me.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's special guest is Dr. Meredith Kugar. She's a young plastic and reconstructive surgeon who joined a well-established practice named Meridian Plastic Surgeons. They're located in Carmel, Indiana, and she's been there for 9 months now. So Dr. Kugar grew up and began her medical studies in Indiana and completed her residency at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. She then did a fellowship with Drs. Holly and Simeon Wall at the Wall Center for Plastic Surgery in Shreveport, Louisiana, before returning back to her roots in Indiana and joining Dr. Bruce Venata at Meridian Plastic Surgery. So Dr. Kugar, welcome to Beauty and the Biz. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm so happy to be here. We were kind of chatting earlier, and I have been aware of your podcast for months, and it's crazy to be on here talking to you. So
you're already on. Yep, 9 months in, and you're already hitting the big time. And we'd love to hear. I really love to hear the perspective of the younger surgeon coming up. The whole world has changed a lot very quickly and recently. So let's just dive into it. Why plastic surgery? Why not any other specialty?
yes. So this goes back to my time as a med student, and the crazy thing as I look back is I think one, I probably knew that I wanted to do surgery, and I think I had this small little plastic surgery seed somewhere in me. My mom happens to be a pediatric dentist, and she had done a lot of work at the Children's Hospital in Indianapolis with the cleft lip, cleft palate patients and clinics. So I don't know. I think I was always somewhat enthralled by plastic surgery. And when I was in med school, you'll hear if you like anything besides surgery, go that route. I was kind of, exploring other things. And I also think I had this sort of deep-seated fear of failure of, oh my gosh, if I love plastic surgery, I knew how competitive it was. I kind of didn't want to like it because there was a risk of it not panning out. But I did my surgery rotations. I did a plastic surgery rotation. I immediately fell in love with it. And I knew that this was the one thing that I wanted to do. And, I kind of had one chance and I figured I should go for it. And it's probably one of the bravest things I've done, but I'm so glad I did. I think I went on to match in plastic surgery at the University of North Carolina and just have loved it. I love our specialty, and I feel so fortunate to be a plastic surgeon.
So did you always know you were going back to Indiana, or did you get to North Carolina and think, oh, maybe I'll try another state?
Yeah, Catherine, I loved North Carolina, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking of my fiance. My fiance would have answered yes to that question. He knows I'm very close to my family who's still in the Indianapolis and Chicago area. But we did strongly consider going back to North Carolina, where I trained. I really do love that state. My fiance's from there. His whole family's still there. So we were investigating jobs in both locales, and yeah, I ended up back in my hometown, which is kind of crazy, but I'm super happy to be back.
Well, I was so interested to hear your fellowship was with Holly and Simeon Wall at the Wall Center in Shreveport, Louisiana. They're very well known in the plastic surgery arena. And how did you end up matching with them? And what kind of experience was that like?
Oh my gosh, Catherine, I could talk about this in its own podcast episode. So I went through the aesthetic fellowship match, and it's funny. I think the process has evolved a little bit since COVID. A lot of the interviews were virtual. I had my first kind of virtual meeting with Doctors Simeon and Holly Wall, and then they invited me to come down to Shreveport for sort of an in-person interview. And they take hiring a fellow seriously. They have an amazing practice, but they don't require a fellow to run. So it's much more about, who's going to be a good fit for our practice for the year. And thankfully they thought that was me. And I ended up matching there, but oh my goodness, I have the utmost respect for them as surgeons, as people. They truly want to educate the next generation of plastic surgeons. I felt that way as their fellow. They also have residents from UT Southwestern who regularly rotate at their practice. And I think it is really rare to find, rare period, and rare in our specialty to find really good teachers who I think have been so thoughtful about their techniques, their results, who've really pushed the limits of our specialty, with their careers. And Holly and Simeon are both that independently. Most of your audience might know this, but Dr. Simeon Wall invented the technique of safe liposuction. Holly has been, a pioneer in a lot of breast surgery techniques, and you'll find her at the podium on a lot of meetings. So for me to have a year operating consistently with the two of them, it's hard for me to put into words, I think, how much that took my technical skill to the next level. They, care about every little detail, every little maneuver in the operating room. I think it took me to a level of excellence that there is no chance I would have approached without them, or certainly not at this point in my career. So I love them deeply. And I also think that they helped me end up where I currently am at this practice, which we can get into too.
Right. So it sounds like you got fantastic surgical experience. Did
Yeah,
they also teach you or train you on the business and marketing side of running a practice?
absolutely. They have at their practice, they have a surgery center, a spa, and then obviously a plastic surgery practice. And Dr. Simeon Wall is an incredible business person. I really enjoyed the whole year. He would give me different books to read. I still have not read all of them, Dr. Wall. And we'd have chats. I was able to pick his brain on a lot of different concepts. Gosh, we had conversations about overhead, about whether as a young surgeon, if I'm assuming the majority of a risk joining a practice, or if that practice is, we had so many conversations that I think really formed how I went into ultimately, the place where I was going to practice, and also contract negotiations and that sort of thing.
Did you know you were going to join another practice, or were you thinking, oh, I'll just do my own thing? What was your mindset before you got there and then after?
So that's a good question. I did not know what I was going to do when I got there. And, Catherine, I think for the first couple months of fellowship, I was, like kind of getting my bearings, figuring out fellowship. And at one point, Simeon kind of said to me, he was like, he would tell it to you straight. And sometimes it was things you needed to hear, but he was like, Meredith, you need to have a sense of urgency about this job thing and where you're going. And that kind of, I will never forget it. And it did light a good fire underneath me. And, then I started more intentionally. I cold called a couple practices in North Carolina, and then the Walls knew I was interested in coming back to the Indianapolis area, and they are good friends with Dr. Bruce Van Natta, who is one of the two owners of the practice that I joined. And they were able to connect me with him. My first meeting with him was in the fall of my fellowship year. And I think, Catherine, I did plan to join someone. I think going out on your own is always enticing in a way. You can do things exactly how you want. You have all the control, et cetera. But there are a lot of advantages to joining a practice, I think, when you're just coming out. And that felt more right for me, probably.
Right. I hear you on that one. Do you do all cosmetic, or are you also doing reconstructive?
I'm about, I would say at this point, 75% cosmetic and then 25% reconstructive. And that has been, my practice takes insurance. That has been a nice thing, as I've been starting to be able to have, a quarter-ish of my practice be breast reconstruction, insurance breast reductions. And then also I do some Mohs surgery.
I mean, just getting the surgical experience because you got some fantastic training, but now you want to get more under your belt,
Yeah,
right? So I think the recon would help a lot with that.
absolutely. It does. And I enjoy that patient population. So I think for me, definitely right now, I honestly love having it as a part of my practice.
You also have you walked into a very nice practice. It's been around a long time. They're very well-known surgeons. So tell me, how did you join that practice? What was are you an associate, a contractor? What are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. At this moment in time, I'm an employed physician or surgeon.
Mhm.
And was your question how I joined it exactly?
Mhm. Well, what was the agreement? I mean, did you come in as what? A
Yeah.
partner, an associate?
Yeah. Great question. I guess technically neither of those, but an employed physician with the understanding. So, kind of as you alluded to, the practice I joined is a very well established practice
Mhm.
in the Indianapolis area. I think they have an incredible practice reputation, good brand recognition. And this practice was started by Dr. Stephen Perkins, who's a facial plastic surgeon. And then who I think you know, but he ended up partnering with Dr. Bruce Vianata, who is a plastic surgeon. And both of them are at similar spots in their career, close to retirement. Dr. Perkins actually retired this past December, but they were figuring out their succession plan. And Dr. Perkins, who had a fellowship at this practice, he hired one of his last fellow, well, his second to last fellow, Dr. Luke Sturgill, to take over his practice. And then Dr. Vianata was looking for someone to take over his practice. And our practice is one of the unique things about it is we do teach the Indiana University plastic surgery residents at our practice. It's where they get their aesthetic experience. So I feel really fortunate to have trained with the walls because Dr. Vianata sees a lot of awesome, well qualified plastic surgery residents. But I think because I had done this fellowship, I think that made me more competitive in the job search. I think it made him say, I know who you trained with. I know they're great surgeons. I know that you can come to my practice and hit the ground running. So I think it made me a desirable hire. And um, but I was hired with the intent that eventually I would take over Dr. Vianata's practice and eventually buy him out.
Hello there. Quick pause to ask you if you have gaps in your practice draining your time, profits, and peace of mind. If so, I can help you streamline, grow, and take the guesswork out of your practice. Book your practice growth strategy review at catherinemaley.com, and let's turn those gaps into growth. Now, back to the podcast. Nice. And then it's a gorgeous center. You can buy a lot of real estate in Indianapolis, more so than in California. Do you know what the square footage is?
Yeah, I want to say it's around 15,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a nice place. And you have your own, how many surgical suites do you have
We have
in-house?
two operating rooms.
Hmm.
It's an incredible location right off the interstate, but yet still kind of discreet. Carmel is an affluent suburb of the
Hmm.
Indianapolis area, so it's an incredible location and honestly, piece of land and building as well.
Right? I assume they own the building, right?
Dr. Perkins does, yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, is he still the landlord?
yes,
Okay. Um, so now you also have a spa, and the spa is called Spa 170 West.
yeah.
Why is it called that?
Catherine, this predates me a little bit. They did a rebranding maybe within the last like 3 to 5 years, I think. So our address is like 170 is the number of our address. So
Mm.
I think it comes from that. But yes, we do have a spa as part of our practice as well.
And has that been helpful for you to kind of get your feet wet and get your name recognition out by offering non-surgical services, or you just focus strictly on surgical?
Yeah, we have a little bit of an interesting setup as far as that goes. Um, Myself and Dr. Sturgill, we do injections, fillers, Botox as part of the clinic. And then we also have the spa where, if I have a patient who wants a BBL or a Moxie or a facial or, who I'll send up there, they also do fillers and toxins in the spa. But for people who want to see a surgeon for that, we do a little bit of that. I think I think at the Walls practice, I saw a really incredible integration with their spa and how each entity fed the other patients. And it was a very symbiotic relationship. To be totally honest, I think we could do a little bit of a better job of that where I am. They kind of feel a little bit more isolated. So I think
Mhm.
that's one thing we're working on for or one future goal we have probably.
Right? Is there anything in particular you saw the walls do that because that is so true. I look at that as a referral source. And I've had practices that have a hair salon, a med spa, and a surgical practice. And the
Wow.
three of them are cross promoting like crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's become like this self-fulfilling lead
Wow.
generation machine, and they
Right.
don't have to count so much on all the outside, advertising. So, can you see that happening in your practice, or what's something you could do sooner rather than later?
Yeah. No, that is a very good question. And I think kind of like so many things, it so many challenging things in business, sometimes it might come down to just culture. I think at the
Yes.
walls
Mhm.
was really good buy-in, and I think in Louisiana it happens to be a state where your injectors have to be nurse practitioners. So I think
Oh,
I think in Louisiana are and I think, you can give any provider a certain amount of education that can help them better send those surgical referrals your way. But I think the nurse practitioners in Louisiana and Shreveport were very good at, knowing the limits of their treatments, and when there was someone who needed surgery, sending them to Dr. Holly or Dr. Simeon, and vice versa. They would say, you're interested in X, Y, or Z, like we have the people who can take care of you at the spa. So I think it's interesting to think about how you really build that culture, because I think it requires buy-in from everybody. And I think one thing that that Simeon also does a very good job with is incentivizing employees, for not in a way that makes things competitive, but ultimately is rising everybody's ship. And I think he's very savvy with how he structures some of that. Because I think at our practice right now, sometimes we have a little bit of the mentality of still wanting to keep your patient as your patient. I don't know if you would have any interesting things to add to that.
no, the key word you said was culture. That all comes from the top.
Yeah,
Everyone's going it is gonna filter down, and if you have that culture of we're all here for the good of the practice, not for ourselves and not the
right.
individuals, that takes some repetition and leadership to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we've got some work to do, but I think it's so nice for me because I've seen it exist, more seamlessly and cohesively, and so I at least know that it's possible.
Well, are the walls motivating and incentivizing as a whole? Like, is it like bonused on productivity as a team or bonused as a position? Because that might be the difference there. He might be doing it as a team, so you're all working together.
It's I think, Catherine, it is both.
Mm.
There is an incentive for everybody for, certain targets, but then they also have individual targets and incentives too. So, because I think that is a hard thing, and I'm not yet an owner of Spa 170 West, so I have not really dug into all of this, um,
Gotcha.
but I will be hopefully picking Simeon's brain a little bit more, because I do think the way that he has kind of pulled some of those levers has
Mhm.
been incredibly smart.
Well, and keep in mind he's been at it for 20 years, so he's
Yeah,
had a lot of
yeah,
testing and tweaking. And
yeah,
but boy, if you can shortcut it by just doing what he's doing, that would be fantastic.
yeah, yeah. You're correct about that.
How big is your team in Carmel?
It is pretty big, Catherine. Gosh, I think we probably have like 35 to 40 employees across practice and surgery center and spa. So, um, so yeah, we have kind of a complicated overhead structure, I guess.
Are you up for that? That's a whole other can of worms, the like leadership and managing people and developing culture. Are they is Dr. Venata good at that or role modeling for that for you? Because you'd have to step into that eventually.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Yes, I would say Dr. Vanata is very good at that. He has great rapport um, with a lot of the employees. And one thing I was actually talking to an employee about today, and this employee has been there for 20 plus years. And I think, I do think one thing that Dr. Vanata and Dr. Perkins have done a great job of is treating their employees well. And there are many people who have been there for an extended amount of time. And I hope that's something that Dr. Luke Sturgill and I can carry forward is, that retention. I think that says a whole lot. So I think that, I certainly think there's a lot of solid building blocks already in place, but then it's also really fun to think about a lot of the kind of the changes that Dr. Sturgill and I think both want to make and are on the same page with.
It'll evolve. Um, on
So
the one hand, I love the continuity of having somebody there a long time, but on
yeah,
the other hand, when you go in as a consultant and you're trying to show them, here's a different way to do this to get you a better result and it's more efficient, there can be so much resistance to change. And I just worked with a group and that staff was going to fight me every step of the way, but the
yeah,
management was allowing that. And
yeah,
I thought, "Oh my gosh, I
yeah,
I'm gonna start teaching more leadership, because someone's gotta do it." You have to have really solid managers if you're not gonna do it yourself as a surgeon, and I don't blame you for not, but you have to be the visionary, but then
right,
get some killer managers who know what they're doing, but then give them the authority to have some credibility, because
yeah,
oftentimes the managers are impotent. They're supposed to be running the show, but the staff goes right over their heads to the surgeons, complains, and say, "Oh, okay, we don't have to do that."
yeah,
That can be so toxic. Boy, you are in for a challenge because I didn't realize you had huge staff like that. It'll be
yeah,
interesting but it's such good growth for you just
yeah.
to figure people out and
It totally is. And, I think, gosh, you hit on some really important things. I think that's another thing I saw at the walls. I saw employees doing that at the walls, going over managers to talk to the doctors. And,
yeah,
that was not what they wanted. They were, I think they completely are the visionaries and ultimately had the final say, but we're trying to do some work to more to give greater empowerment to the OR manager, the practice
right?
manager, things like that. So I think that is a unique challenge for surgeons because you're right, we can't do it all. You're relying on other people to help you with that. And this came up at our practice really recently with we have a new OR manager, and
Mhm,
unfortunately, an OR employee needed to be fired, and
mhm.
it was kind of the first time where it was like, okay, this is her decision, this is her thing that she can own, and we almost became a little too involved in that, but it's a great opportunity for her to prove herself. So yeah, you're so right about a lot of that stuff. And then the other thing I was going to say too is I have felt that coming in as someone new with new fresh ideas, wanting to do some new fresh things, and being looked at like, great idea, cool, maybe that'll happen in 2 years, and you're
Yeah.
like, but let's get it started now. So you're right, that's for sure a challenge.
What would you say is the biggest challenge so far in your 9 months?
Yeah. Um, so we have an electronic medical record system, but we also rely on paper charts, if that makes
Mm,
sense. So
wow.
that has been a big thing that we're in the process of eliminating, and I'm kind of spearheading that project. So if we put that on the shelf, the whole EMR issue, then the next
Mm,
thing I think has been personnel. There was a patient care coordinator who was supposed to be working with me when I started. She'd been at the practice for a long time. She was very experienced. She ended up leaving for another opportunity. So there was kind of this vacuum, and I didn't have anybody. And thankfully, we have a couple different surgeons who operate at our surgery center who don't necessarily own the practice, but one of them was retiring, and his coordinator, I was able to kind of,
oh, nice.
as it were, but I have had to be flexible because, she was wanting to work 2 days a week. So we've had to flex. Like, I love this person. I love how she communicates with patients. I think she can, close the deal for me, but I've had to be a little bit like there was this moment where I either let her go and had to come up with plan C, or we figured out how to make some things work. So it's, and I'm really glad that I've been able to keep her, but that has been a challenge finding my right hand woman, I think.
I hear you. Staff will always be the biggest challenge just because human beings are involved and they're at
Yeah,
different stages in their life. And oh my gosh, there's
yeah,
nothing easy about that.
yeah.
So let's go to the fun side, and that's marketing.
Right.
I love that you have your own website, but you also there's a practice website and there's your website. Then there's Instagram that they're allowing you to grow your Instagram. So I
Yeah,
love that you have the flexibility. That's where you'll get your creativity, perhaps for right now. You
yeah.
can at least grow your brand and your name
Mhm.
and who you are. And has that been helpful to you? Because that's really unusual. A lot of practices say, no, 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 you're not doing any of that. We're going to stay within the practice.
Yeah, that has been one of my favorite parts, honestly, thus far. And I think it has been a huge advantage. I will say, when I kind of looked at our practice model, I was like, this is weird. I'm joining a place, but everyone's kind of siloed. Everyone kind of
Right.
does have their own websites, their own marketing. Um, so it was a system that was in place before me. I don't know that I would have like picked it, but
Mm.
I have loved getting to, first of all, I'm so fortunate that I work with a marketing and creative agency called Studio 7000. But, from the jump, knowing I would need my own website and branding, I met with them and they were really intentional. I should give them credit about getting to know me and really what makes me tick. And then spending time to figure out how to translate that into my brand, both tone of voice and also, the actual visual representation of the brand with things like logo. And I think I think all of this work on the front end with them allowed us to do something that feels really true to me. And I love just seeing the visual representation of it across Instagram, my website. I think it's very consistent across all those different platforms. And they absolutely helped me with that. And then I also think, Catherine, one of the things that we were pretty intentional about doing is we wanted to be a little bit different within the plastic surgery space. And Studio 7000 doesn't have like a robust, amount of plastic surgeons that they have helped. But I think that was actually a strength. And I think it really helped us to kind of focus on, I wanted my website, my Instagram to be warm, inviting. I didn't want it to feel exclusive or stock image heavy. I wanted it to be a place that people really felt comfortable coming for information, coming for a consult. And I think I'm just so grateful because I think they really helped to translate that into a brand, which just feels right for me.
Well, you also have a killer backlink from their website because meridianplasticsurgery.com, I mean, they've been around forever. They must
Yeah,
have killer rankings in Google. And when you're brand new, your best bet is to piggyback off of something else. So on their website, you can click and go to your website. So that I thought, okay, good move on that. Because on the one hand, you want to practice to be cohesive, and that's how you develop a culture when you're all under the same roof.
right.
On the other hand, to have your own identity, because I don't think many people call Meridian and say, "Oh, I just need a tummy tuck by anybody there." Don't they? I mean, I would think they normally have a doctor in mind, or not. Do you find that there that people just randomly just call Meridian for plastic surgery, or are they asking for a doctor?
Catherine, it's hard because I would say a little bit of both. I think
Oh,
I've
good. Okay.
really benefited from the reputation of our practice. And sometimes
Mhm.
people will call and they've heard Dr. Vanatta's name, but it's going to be a while before they can get in to see him. And then they'll happily come see me. So that's
Good.
definitely
Good.
helpful.
Yep.
I will say though, we don't as a practice put a lot of money into that Meridian Plastic Surgery website. So for me, it's been my own Instagram. I have spent money on Instagram ads as well as Google ads.
Mhm.
And those things drive people to me organically through Google or Instagram outside of this practice reputation. So those two things have been helpful for me. And I think coming out, honestly, I feel like it would have been hard without either.
So when you joined the practice, were you expected to find your own niche and, like eat what you kill? Or were they handing you patients? And I love the idea of plan A and B. If Venata is not available or is too price heavy for you, here's plan
Yes.
B. I love that idea because so did you have a full schedule when you got there or did you have to develop one?
No, I had to develop one completely. I started with one clinic day. I now have two clinic days. I still have one OR day, but I scrounge other days as I can get them. So I did have to build it. And I think, I think when you join someone like Dr. Vianata, or if I'd stayed on at the walls, or, Dr. Perkins, for instance, these sort of surgery behemoths who have this incredible reputation. People come to them because they want surgery from them. So I think it's hard when you're new. Like, yes, you're eating off that table, but you're also carving out your own niche. And I think leveraging my network in Indianapolis, I'm from here, my family's here, I think that and really that word of mouth was another powerful driver early on because we know plastic surgery is different. Like you want someone who's been through that experience or who's slightly more connected somehow and, is going to tell you what a great experience it was. So despite coming into this big practice, I do still very much feel like I had to access my own marketing, my own network to start getting busy.
Gotcha. Have you noticed any particular patient trends that you were surprised about or who seems to gravitate towards you?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think one interesting one just to mention is I think probably younger surgeons and also female surgeons, like this is just an easy example, but my breast augmentation consult, I will have my patients try on sizers. I will also do a 3D Vectra with them and, try to get to as close of a spot as we possibly can. And Dr. Vianata, who's an incredible surgeon, has incredible results. He's more like we'll pick what we'll pick in the operating room, kind of your tissues will decide. So I think for younger patients who maybe want to feel a little bit more involved, there's a difference in our breast augmentation consult. And, I tell people frequently, go talk to a handful of plastic surgeons. You'll get a handful of different answers. But I think we have different enough approaches and my approach, fits better for some patients, I think.
Right. What's the safe lipo? Why is Dr. Wall
Yeah.
did that, or is that a good differentiator for you? Because I love the word safe lipo. What is it?
It is a good differentiator for me, I think. So the easiest way to explain it, I think, is safe liposuction is all manual. It's all just with suction assisted liposuction, but it has different steps to it. And there are fancy liposuction devices like Vaser, Renuvion. There are energy assisted lipo devices. They can cause more scarring, potential risk for more contour deformities. So I don't use any of those things. I use the safe liposuction technique and I love it. I legitimately do feel like it's safer. And yes, that is something that I've done Instagram posts about, blog posts about because that is a differentiator. Yeah.
Okay, good. Regarding Instagram, how much time are you putting into that? Is it a major focus, and are you getting results from it?
Yeah. So, um, I'd say a few hours a week I'm probably putting into it. One thing that really helps again is working with my marketing and creative agency to do like a content calendar for the coming month. They help me stay accountable. I'm not the biggest Instagram girl, like if left to my own devices. So if we go into a month and have this content calendar, I know we're at least trying to stick to that. So and I always feel like I can be doing a little bit more on that, but I'm trying to do the most that I can right now. And I do think it has been a helpful driver. There's some sort of hot topics like Motiva implants. I'm one of the few surgeons in Indianapolis who is offering those implants. So, one of my best performing reels was about that. And, I think putting current stuff out there is helpful and I have definitely had patients come see me for consults from Instagram.
I would, anytime a vendor is involved, I would always befriend them and dip into any marketing resources that they have or tools they have, they can be super helpful to you, and,
Yeah.
you could become a thought leader for them. I've just
Yeah.
noticed the vendors and the pharma people have some pretty deep pockets,
Yeah.
that you could tap into possibly. Regarding, you need to build up your social proof because you're very young, and I'm sure people are saying to you, "Are you really a surgeon? Are you really?" So you need some social proof here. Have you had challenges getting the before and after photos or getting the patients to give you a review, or what's working for you in that regard?
Yeah. Catherine, one thing that has surprised me actually when I started, I did not have some fellowships. You leave with a robust kind of profile of before and afters. The Walls Fellowship is actually not like that. I had a few before and afters, but not a ton. And I was kind of surprised at the amount of people who did not ask for that or were
Oh,
okay not seeing that. Obviously at this point, 9 months in, I have more photos to show people, but I think people, okay, so then if you think, what are they relying on if they're not relying on photos? I think they're relying on how you come across on Instagram and on your website. And I also think they're relying on reviews. And that was one helpful tip I got actually from a friend of mine from training who's a couple years ahead of me. She's a plastic surgeon in Richmond. Shout out to Dr. Karishma Reddy. But she was like, start getting your Google reviews. And I started that in fellowship. And I have patients who come in all the time and say, like, I was researching a couple people, like you had awesome Google reviews. So that has been helpful too.
don't you have like 81 Google reviews?
Oh, you're nice. You might be adding me with someone else. I think I have 40, but
Oh, but
take 40
okay.
after 9 months.
Well, and Google, I mean, the patients care about that, and so does Google. And I
Yeah,
would focus, if you can only focus on one review site, go with Google because they
yeah,
still own the world, and
yeah,
it's really good social proof on your end. So
yeah.
tell me, any patient or staff story you care to share?
My gosh. One thing comes to mind from fellowship. So probably most people listening would be familiar with if we are doing a breast lift, we make those patients stop nicotine because there's a lot of risks for nipple necrosis. So we have them stop nicotine. We have them do nicotine testing, usually 2 weeks before surgery and the day of surgery. And we were doing, some sort of breast lift on this patient. And it was after the surgery. She was like getting up from her bed in PACU. And this little cup of urine like fell out of her stuff and she had literally brought someone else's urine to use and do this urine coating test in. So um, Holly immediately like fired her from the practice. Holly said that will not fly here.
Oh
So,
my God.
but sometimes people are a little devious, Catherine, if they really want that plastic surgery.
I say it all the time. The doctors say to me, "Oh, no, no, I haven't quit." And I say, "Just FYI, if they could quit smoking, they would have by now." They
Yeah,
can't even it's not smoking is not usually a hobby, it's an addiction. So
yeah,
I say to the staff who contacts them, "Just so you know how seriously we take this for your own safety and your own recovery, you will be tested 2 weeks before and the morning of, and if you don't pass." In your case, apparently you had to go even a step further and say, "And we will, track you down and make sure it's your
yeah,
good." Like, that's crazy.
yeah. I know. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Oh, okay. Last question. Tell us something we don't know about you.
Yes. Well, I'm getting married on May 10th, which
Oh.
is really exciting.
Oh
So
my God, that's really soon.
I know it's so soon.
You might be married by the time we run this. Well,
I might be.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you
Yeah,
gonna get
but
married in Indianapolis or in North Carolina?
yes, in Indianapolis. We're having a fairly big wedding here. I'm wearing kind of a non-traditional wedding dress,
What
which
color?
um well, if we're releasing this after, I can say it. There's a print on it, which I'm really excited about.
Interesting.
But I suppose even more important than my dress, Catherine, is my lovely fiance, Will, who was willing to move to Indianapolis from North Carolina. He's incredibly supportive. He also was with me when we moved to Shreveport for my fellowship journey. So he really has been incredible and just so supportive as I work long hours and try to really get my practice off the ground. So Shout out to Will.
Congratulations for having that support system. That can make your life so much easier because right now you're still in throes of who am I and what am I doing? And it's a very
Yeah,
stressful time for you to have a nice support system and
yeah,
for him to relocate it with you is
yeah.
congratulations. You found a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Have a fantastic how big is the wedding?
I think like 230-ish.
I don't even know 230 people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's a big wedding.
we'll see what happens. It is a big wedding. Yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be a handful of plastic surgeons in attendance.
I'll bet. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much. It has been a pleasure. I will be watching your career, and as you grow, we'll have you back on to see how did you merge, let's say, the older men exiting and the
Yes.
younger coming in, and then
Yes.
how did that transition with the rest of the staff and culture? That is so interesting to watch that. So
Yeah.
we'll be talking again. Yeah.
You are right. We have some fun challenges ahead, but thank you so much. This has been such a nice, thought-provoking discussion, and I look forward to chatting more with you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, I believe your website is meredithkugarmd.com.
That is correct. Yep, there's an easy form to fill out there. So if anyone needs anything, yeah, that or an Instagram DM works too.
And what's your handle?
Also, it's Meredith Kugar MD. I'm pretty.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for us today. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Beauty and the Biz, share it with your colleagues and staff. And then if you've got any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.